It was the kind of rain that didn't roar but never stopped. A fine, stubborn drizzle that blurred the street lights and clung to your skin like fog. Inside St. Mary's Children's Hospital, the night was quiet like any other. Low lights hummed. Through the halls, machines beeped steadily, and the footsteps of overnight staff echoed in a calm, predictable rhythm. At the front desk, receptionist Nina was halfway through her third cup of coffee, scrolling through her tablet. Officer Mitchell, the night shift security guard, stood by the vending machine, bored but alert. Everything was still, as it always was at 2:13 a.m. until the automatic doors opened on their own dot. No ambulance, no patient, no voices, just the low hum of the door and a faint dripping sound from the awning outside. And then he appeared, soaked from ears to tail, his coat heavy with rain. A large German shepherd, silent, tense, focused. His eyes didn't scan. They locked as if he already knew exactly where to go. Nina froze, her fingers still wrapped around the coffee cup. Max's wet paws tapped across the tiled floor, each step echoing a little too loud in the stillness. Officer Mitchell turned in confusion, then dropped his mug when he saw the dog striding forward with purpose. Hey, stop. Right there, he barked, raising a hand, the other inching toward his belt. But the dog didn't flinch. He didn't even look his way. He just moved faster, weaving around the desk, ignoring shouts, ignoring hands, like he had no time for fear, like he was late for something. Max didn't run like a dog exploring new territory. He ran like a soldier on a mission. Every turn he took was sharp and intentional. Every movement carved through the hospital halls with purpose. He passed the nurse's station, dodging a rolling stool with barely a flick of his paw. Where the hell did he come from? A nurse whispered, flattening herself against the wall as Max raced by. Another nurse reached for her phone to call upstairs. Someone else shouted for backup from pediatric security, but Max didn't stop. Nurses who had rushed out of their stations now pressed against the walls, startled by the sight of a large, soaked German shepherd barreling through their quiet night shift. Yet something about him held them in place. No barking, no growling, not even a glance their way. He wasn't attacking. He was searching. Officer Mitchell, now running behind, shouted again, "You need to stop. We have kids in here." Max didn't respond. He pivoted left at a junction, his paws skidding slightly as he took the corner too fast. A blue-scrubbed orderly grabbed an empty medication cart and pushed it across the corridor in a desperate attempt to block him. It didn't work. Max slipped sideways, barely grazing the wheels, landed hard, and kept moving, not once looking back. Where is he going? Someone asked aloud, breathless. "Pediatrics," a nurse answered, already starting to move. He turned toward pediatrics. The hallway buzzed with voices, now questions, commands, confusion, but Max heard none of it. The only sound he followed was something only he could sense. On the third floor, nurse supervisor Carla Morris was reviewing patient charts at the pediatric wing desk when her radio crackled. Unattended dog approaching children's unit. Large. Looks like a German shepherd. Proceed with caution. She stood up instantly. Who let a dog into this hospital? Two nurses stepped out into the corridor just as the tapping sound of wet paws echoed around the corner. Slower now, but still deliberate. And then Max appeared. His fur, darker now from the rain and hallway lighting, dripped onto the floor, leaving a trail that ran straight through the pediatric wing like a lifeline. The nurses tried to block him, one holding out her arms, another banging a waste bin. To startle him, Max didn't flinch. He weaved between them, a shadow passing between legs and cartwheels, and darted down the final hallway. Someone stop him. Carla shouted, but it was too late. Max had reached room 312, and there, at the end of that quiet corridor, the dog stopped. He didn't push the door. He didn't bark. He just stood there, nose inches from the crack beneath the door, trembling as if he'd found what he came for. For a moment, no one moved. The corridor was still, save for the soft beeping from distant monitors and the quiet dripping of rain from Max's fur onto the hospital floor. Max remained in front of room 312, completely still, except for the steady rise and fall of his chest. His nose touched the small crack at the bottom of the door, and his ears twitched slightly, like he was listening for something no one else could hear. Nurse Carla approached cautiously. "Don't open that door," she said to the orderly next to her. "Get security backup now." But before anyone could stop him, Max lifted his paw and pressed gently against the door. It creaked open just slightly, already left ajar. No growling, no lunging, just a slow, careful push, as if Max understood where he was and who was on the other side. He stepped into the room with surprising grace for a dog his size. His wet paws didn't disturb a single foreline, didn't knock over the metal tray beside the bed, didn't tangle in the wires that surrounded the small figure lying in the hospital bed. Emily Parker, 5 years old, lay motionless, her small body dwarfed by the white sheets and the glow of machines. Her chest rose and fell slowly, the only sign of life. Max looked at her, really looked. He moved to the side of the bed, lifted himself carefully, and placed both front paws beside her pillow. Then, with almost ritualistic gentleness, he lowered his head and rested it right over her chest. The monitors didn't alarm. The 4 bags didn't shift. Max didn't move. He simply breathed with her, matching her rhythm beat for beat. Behind him, the staff froze in the doorway. No one dared interrupt. There was something sacred in that room now, something that didn't belong to medicine. A young nurse whispered, "Look at the heart monitor." Carla stepped forward, peering at the screen, and frowned because something was happening. Emily's heartbeat, once erratic and faint, was evening out. Stronger, more consistent, like her body had remembered something it had almost forgotten. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Dr. James Turner, the pediatrician on Nidal, arrived breathless, a clipboard tucked under his arm. He had been tending to a trauma case 2 floors down when the call came in. A dog had broken into the pediatric unit and was now inside a coma patient's room. He expected chaos, a code gray, maybe a nurse bitten or a child startled. Instead, he found stillness. Through the doorway of room 312, the sight stopped him cold. There, in the dim light of the room, was a large German shepherd, soaked, silent, unmoving, resting his head gently on Emily Parker's chest. Monitors pulsed steadily. Beside them, the girl's breathing was deeper than before. Her skin had lost the power it carried just hours ago. No one spoke. No one dared. Dr. Turner slowly stepped into the room, eyes locked on the dog. His brow furrowed and he moved closer, squinting at the animal's soaked coat, the dark ring around its collar. Then his voice cracked. "Max," Nurse Carla turned to him, "you know this dog?" He didn't answer at first. Instead, he knelt down by the bed, looking more closely at Max's face. The markings, the eyes, the way he hadn't moved a muscle since entering the room. "Yes," he said softly, "I do." He looked toward Emily. He was hers. This? Dog Max. He belonged to Emily. He was with her when the fire broke out. Carla gasped. A few others exchanged stunned glances. Dr. Turner continued, almost as if piecing the memory together in real time. The paramedics said she was pulled from the house unconscious. They never found the dog. We all assumed he trailed off, that he didn't make it, Nurse Carla whispered. And somehow, Dr. Turner said, his voice thick, now he found her. No one said a word, because they all knew this wasn't just a dog that wandered in from the storm. This was something else. The news traveled faster than protocol could stop it. Within minutes, Sarah Parker, Emily's mother, was racing through the main corridor of St. Mary's, her shoes slipping slightly on the wet floor tiles, her breath ragged from panic and exhaustion. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from a week of tears and sleepless nights. No one had told her everything on the phone, just that there had been an incident in her daughter's room. Something strange, something important. She turned the final corner and froze. The doorway to room 312 stood open. Inside, she saw them. Her daughter still and pale under the blankets. And the dog, her dog. Max, she whispered. Her voice cracked as if her throat had forgotten how to speak. Max didn't move at first. He stayed where he was, still and steady on Emily's chest, until he turned his head slightly, ears rising. Then their eyes met. There was no tail wag, no bark, no dramatic rush toward her, just a look. Calm, sure, present. And for Sarah, that was enough. Her knees gave way and she collapsed right there on the floor, hands covering her mouth as a sob escaped her chest. "My God, it's really you," she whispered. "You came back. You found her." Behind her, Daniel Parker arrived, clutching his car keys in one hand, coat still drenched from the rain. He stopped cold at the doorway, seeing his wife on the floor. And then he saw Max. Hadn't need to ask. His hand gently found Sarah's shoulder, and he sank to his knees beside her. For a few moments they didn't speak. They didn't move. They simply watched. A family that thought they had lost everything, reunited in the quietest, most impossible way. And in the middle of it all, Max lay still, his eyes shifting between them and the little girl beneath him. He wasn't celebrating, he was guarding. And his mission wasn't over yet. For the next hour, no one moved Max. No one dared. Doctors came and went. Administrators whispered about policies. Security stood by, uncertain whether to act or just observe. But through it all, Max stayed exactly where he was, curled up on the bed, his head resting gently on Emily's chest, as if belonged nowhere else in the world. Dr. Turner stood near the door, arms crossed, watching closely. He'd seen children fight for their lives. He'd seen medical miracles, but nothing had ever looked like this. A young intern finally spoke. "Should we try to relocate the dog? Maybe move him to another room?" Before we reveal what the doctor said next, tell us in the comments if you were the doctor in this moment. Would you let Max stay with Emily, or would you follow protocol and remove him from the hospital? And if this story touched you, like and share it with someone who needs a little hope. Dr. Turner shook his head slowly. "He's not a visitor," he said, voice calm and sure. "He's part of the treatment now." There was a pause and then a murmur of quiet agreement filled the hallway, because deep down everyone felt it, even if they couldn't explain it. Since Max arrived, the entire energy around Emily had shifted. The heart monitor no longer danced with erratic spiks. Her skin, once cool and pale, had started to regain warmth and color. Her breaths were deeper. Her fingers twitched with the smallest signs of life. And Max, he hadn't barked once, hadn't moved except to adjust himself carefully when nurses came to check vitals. It was as if he knew what not to touch, where not to step. Even Nurse Carla, once the firm rule enforcer, found herself silently wiping away a tear as she looked at the scene. Later that night, the hospital's pediatric committee met briefly. Exceptions were rarely made at St. Mary's, but unanimous agreement. They issued a temporary clearance. Max would be allowed to remain by Emily's side. No leash, no kennel. Just him and the little girl he never stopped searching for. The sun rose slowly on a quiet Monday morning, casting a warm golden light through the blinds of room 312. The room looked almost unchanged. machines humming, ivies gently dripping, and Max, ever faithful, still curled beside Emily like a living statue carved from loyalty itself. He had barely slept. Nurses came and went with quiet reverence, adjusting wires, checking levels, whispering instead of speaking. They walked lighter now, as if the room had become sacred ground. Sarah sat in the chair beside the bed, her hand gently wrapped around Emily's. Her eyes were tired, but they no longer carried despair. Only hope, fragile, but growing. Max stirred, his ears twitched. Sarah felt a faint movement in Emily's fingers, so light she almost thought she imagined it. She leaned in. "Emily, baby." Emily's eyelids fluttered once, twice, and then slowly, carefully, they opened. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth with own hand as tears flooded her eyes. "Emily, can you hear me?" Emily blinked, her eyes adjusting to the soft light. Her lips moved slightly, dry and uncertain, but trying. Max lifted his head. And then, in a voice no louder than a breath, Emily whispered, "Max." It wasn't a question. It wasn't surprise, it was certainty. Like she knew he had been there the whole time. Max let out a quiet bark, his first since stepping into the hospital. He wagged his tail gently without getting up. His eyes locked onto hers. "You came back," her seemed to say. "I never left," his seemed to reply. The monitor beeping quickened. Slightly, not in panic, but in rhythm. Strong, clear. Outside the room, a nurse caught the moment on her phone, hands trembling. The video would later go viral, but in that moment, none of that mattered. Inside room 312, something unexplainable had happened. A girl came back from the edge, and the first word she spoke was the name of Theon who found her there. The story of Max. And Emily spread through St. Mary's like morning lights slipping through window blinds. Gentle, inevitable, and quietly powerful. Doctors spoke of it in the cafeteria with softened voices. Janitors paused in their rounds to peek into room 312. Nurses who once rushed through night shifts now walked slower past her door, some placing a hand on the frame without knowing why. Inside, not much had changed. Emily was still recovering, still weak, still wrapped in blankets and machines, but her color was better. Her voice had returned, small but steady. She responded to her parents' no, smiled at the nurses, and asked quietly if Max could stay just a little longer, and he did. When Emily was moved to the recovery wing, Max walked beside her wheelchair. Staff lined the hallway, some clapping, some holding back tears. Others simply stood in silence, watching the dog, who had crossed a storm, defied logic, and brought back something no machine could measure: hope. His presence didn't just help Emily. It changed the air of the hospital itself. People were softer, kinder, slower to judge, quicker to care. What Max brought into room 312 was something no protocol could replicate. The kind of connection that reminded everyone why they chose to work in a place like this in the first place. Outside under the soft morning sun, Sarah was asked what she thought of everything that had happened. She smiled, eyes filled with both awe and gratitude. "We thought we'd lost them both," she said quietly. "But maybe love doesn't get lost. Maybe it just waits until it's needed again." Max sat beside her, eyes lifted to the window above where Emily waved down at him. He didn't bark. He just watched and waited. His mission wasn't over. Not yet.